On this week's episode, we're going to be talking about how your messages are perfectly safe, especially soon with this new technology with Apple and Google for reals.
That doesn't sound right.
Sort of. There's sort of not really. Not. We'll get into it. Welcome to episode number 359 of Destination Linux, your favorite video podcast. My name is Ryan.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Jill.
We're also going to cover Google finally deciding to delete some history, but not the kind you probably wanted it to delete. Now let's get the show on the road towards Destination Linux. So our feedback this week comes from Jim. Jim goes on to say, a lot of your defense of snaps is disingenuous at best. Hopefully I'm capturing your tone here, Jim, properly. Snaps have a few benefits over Flatpaks, which I hope Flatpaks improves, and competition is good to a point. But the best thing that could happen once Flatpak is fit for all use cases is for snaps to die. Did I get it, Jim? Write us and let us know if I got your tone correct there.
Yes. How did he interpret your email?
Yeah. I just imagine you writing this very angrily. It's a little angry here. There should be only one C System D and how that has improved the ecosystem. So, Jim, sorry that you thought we were disingenuous there, but I can appreciate your passionate email. You know, there are rants on this show. Times I've gotten very upset with certain things like, I don't know, Ubuntu's hardware enablement.
That's just good.
Being slow.
That's just good business, man.
Just good business. So I know what it's like to not like something and you kind of get really passionate about it. And I'm sorry you felt it was disingenuous, but it would be really nice if you sent us some examples in this email. And I'm not being facetious here, of why you think snaps should die. Because it's one thing to be like, hey, I don't like snaps and I don't want to use them, and I think Flatpaks would be more popular, but you want this other product to completely die. So if you had some examples of that, of
but
why
also
you feel so passionate.
It's also interesting that he says that snaps are better in some ways, but it still should die.
Yeah. Maybe Jim meant to be funny too in this. You could read that in a funny tone and be like, maybe he was saying this is what a typical.
That's true. It's hard.
You should do a
tell.
/s or something there to let us.
It's hard to tell.
Also, I went back and listened to the episode, and I think we handled it actually quite balanced. There were several things we called out snaps for. We didn't hold back on the things that they hadn't fixed, but we praised them for the things that they did fix. So I give me and Jill an A+ after reading that. And
what's my grade?
Yeah, we'll talk about it after the show. There's some extra work you could do, a little homework to make your grade a little higher. But I'm saying a B. But Jill and I nailed that topic. I think, looking at this unbiasedly, I think we probably covered it greater than any podcast ever has. Jim, just my thoughts.
Look, I'm glad you're unbiased about that.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's an interesting email, and I would like to say that the first thing I want to address is the phrase disingenuous at best. I'm not sure what is really meant by this, because that phrase means that you don't think that a person believes in something. They're saying it even though they don't believe it. When we say that snaps have improved, and here's the weird part, I believe they have. In fact, you can see that they have. Say that, Michael. I guess. So that's why I was a little confused when I first read this email. But there's also the points about, sure, snaps are not perfect, Flatpaks are not perfect, but saying the best thing that could happen is Flatpaks get fit for all use cases and then snaps to die. I wouldn't put it that way, but rather that a single universal format would be ideal. I agree with that, regardless of which one it is.
That'd be a fair way of putting it. Fair, balanced.
And the issues is that it requires one of the formats to cover all use cases. And last I checked, Flatpak is not even attempting to address the server side of stuff.
Yeah.
So that could have changed, but based on my recent research, it doesn't appear that it has. So it couldn't be the solution for everything if they're not attempting to be that solution for everything. So that's another reason why snaps, it makes sense for them to exist. But with all that said, I personally would like to see Ubuntu adopt Flatpaks for the desktop and snaps be refocused for server use. Or alternatively, I'd be okay with Ubuntu simply just bundling Flatpaks out of the box. While that's probably not likely, I think that would be the best for most users because they would just have access to everything right out of the box. But if I could just snap my fingers and make a wish related to this topic.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, I would have all of these developers come together to work on just one of the formats for sure. Regardless of which one it is, I don't know which one is the best choice, but only having one would be the best path for everyone for sure. Perhaps eventually that is going to happen, like an inevitable outcome. But I mean, it is what it is. Like right now, they both exist. They both have reason to exist because one does servers and one doesn't. And, it is what it is.
Yeah. What do you think, Jill?
Yeah. So I agree that it would be nice to have a universal package format like snaps or Flatpaks. But yeah, like Michael was saying, they have different use cases. Flatpaks are desktop and snaps can be used for desktop or server side. And I know Flatpaks, we had talked about on that episode, they weren't, thinking about working on server side Flatpaks.
Right.
So that would be definitely an issue. And I think Michael's point of a universal container would be a really good option because after all, they were kind of copying the technology after macOS.dmgs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in some ways, like app images are more like DMGs because there's no security mechanism inside of DMGs or in app images. Like, so we've had some comments about people talking as like I've mentioned on the past that one of the reasons I don't like app images is because they don't have a security system built in and they don't have an update system built in. And we got a comment from a patron that was asking about how one of their app images has a notice that they've been updated or that there's a new version. And this is a good comment because app images as a format don't have that. But if someone wants to build it in themselves to notify their users, they can. My problem is that that's not a normal. That's not a standard anyway for the format. And even if they did have the notification, it's still not an update. It's just a click to download kind of thing, which in some ways, some people might like that. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the Flatpak versus Snap, I don't know which one is the best in terms of technology. I know which one is the most beloved because of the...
Well, you know which one you use the most. Like, I imagine you use Flatpaks the most.
I use both of them. I probably use Flatpaks the most just because there's more things that I use that are Flatpaks. But there are some things that are only made as snaps, and I use the snaps. So, and there's also the same thing with the only uses app image. And there are times where I use the app image. So it just depends on whatever the format is provided to me is. As long as it runs on my system, I do not care. That's my philosophy. But also, the most important thing here is that people are kind of arguing that snaps versus Flatpaks, but there's also the DEBs and RPM side of it. Mm-hmm. And that part, I think, is not really understood well because a lot of times people are talking about how traditional packages are more performant and things like that and smaller. Or not smaller, we've already talked about that. Or not necessarily always. But the issue with these things is making DEBs and making RPMs is kind of a nightmare. Because you have to make a different version for different distros and a different version for different versions of distros. Yeah. So you could have one package, one application, every version could have 20 DEBs and 5 to 7 RPMs and stuff like that.
How many of the people, Michael, do you think that are mad about like hate snaps or hate Flatpaks actually are developers? Like what percent of them do you think are actually actively developing software out there?
5, maybe 5%.
Yeah. Because anybody who's developing software, I think you're being very gracious with the 5%. It's probably like 0.0003%.
I've had discussions with people who are developers who prefer Flatpaks and some prefer snaps. And their reasoning...
Totally. They may prefer one over the other, but none of them are going to be like, hey, the old system.
Most of them don't hate it. No.
Yeah.
And as far as people who are making software as of the introduction of Flatpaks and Snaps before they were not, those people they don't care. They love both. They love the idea of having something like this and I do too, because there are many times where there's some applications that we've wanted on Linux for so long that were never going to happen because of how painful it is to package for Linux. It used to be an actual nightmare. When I first got into being a part of an application project, I saw how much of a mess it was. And it was just like crazy to me. And then they started making snaps and they started making Flatpaks. And I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And that has proven to be the case we now have a lot of applications that we never were going to have prior.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The other one is, have you noticed how many new applications that are available for Linux are on FlatHub? I mean, it's been amazing. We talk about them here on the show almost every week. Software you can download from FlatHub that doesn't necessarily have a .deb and a .rpm. So obviously developers are really liking the format because it makes it easier to publish their software on Linux.
So Jim, I think I'd like to know honestly why you don't like snaps so much. And I don't like the disingenuous, because we weren't being disingenuous at all. I mean, it's how we feel. Why would we be disingenuous on the topic, frankly?
Why would we make a podcast
none of them sponsor
with
us,
300 episodes if we wanted to make up stuff?
Yeah. And if you look at some of our prior critiques and older episodes of things that Canonical or Red Hat, for that matter, have done, you could tell that we're not really worried about their feelings on
we don't hold back
our opinion. Yeah. No. So but maybe you're a newer listener and things, and I appreciate the feedback nonetheless. But I think that for me, if I see a Flatpak, and Michael mentioned this in the last one, and I thought it was a really good point, because of just the timing, Flatpaks got to where I want from a desktop perspective faster. And generally, if I'm looking for something, I'm going to FlatHub first. And as a last resort, I may look at a Snap version of it. And that's just because kind of Flatpak got to me first, if you will, and they got to where I wanted them to be first. So if you ask me, do I have a preference over one or the other? It's like, well, yeah, I'm going to go Flatpak just because. But if it's server related, I don't have that option, and I always go Snap because it's so easy to set up Nextcloud and things in a Snap version. It's so good. It's so good. And if we're wanting people to come and adopt Linux and start being able to utilize it without having to spend months figuring stuff out, Snaps and a server is a fantastic way to do that. So I don't want Snaps to die out there. I do like Michael's idea that Snaps kind of say, hey, we're going to be more server world, Flatpak's going to be more desktop, but I don't think they're going to, either of them are either probably going to.
I mean, this is like an ideal thing. I would be like, that's my preference. My actual ideal is that they come together and work on as a team, but
together. I know, like a John Lennon thing. One world.
Exactly.
But,
no countries, no borders.
If you could imagine. But then the other issue really is that if I was Canonical, I would basically make both. I wouldn't see a reason to make the technology for the server and not make it for the desktop. It makes sense to do both. So it's not really an issue there. I would just hope that they would be more open to Flatpaks, because I know the reason they don't want to have Flatpaks is because they don't want to guarantee support for something that they're not able to give support on. I get why that's why it's not there by default, and they have to do the enterprise deals and stuff like that. But at the same time, come on, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So if you want to ask us a question or send in your comments like Jim did and tell us we're disingenuous, you can do that by going to destinationlinux.net/comment, and we may read it on the show. You may not think we would read it on the show, but we did. That's how we roll.
Even if they're negative, it's okay. Negative is okay.
I can't believe you called Jill disingenuous, Jill.
I know, that's kind of ridiculous.
That's
especially
really,
Jill. Right?
You didn't say just Ryan and Michael. You included all of us in that. And this community may attack you. I'm just letting you know, Jim. It could happen.
Just warning.
Yeah. It's fine to attack us. Nobody cares. But Jill, that's really crossing the line there, buddy.
This episode of Destination Linux is sponsored by LINBIT. LINBIT has been keeping digital businesses running for over 20 years. They're the makers of open source products like DRBD, which is high availability software that has been part of the Linux kernel since 2010, and LINSTOR, industry-leading open source software-defined storage. LINBIT has an active presence in the open source community, and they collaborate with the community to help identify and build new features. LINBIT provides enterprise-grade software that runs on a variety of platforms and OSs without vendor lock-in. What that means is that you could use the software on any platform, including specific hardware that you want to use, or just off-the-shelf hardware that you get and connect it. All of this stuff can be interchanged really easily. And with DRBD and LINSTOR, you can have high-speed replicated block storage in almost any configuration, whether it's Kubernetes, Apache Cloud, or OpenNebula. There's even DRBD proxy for long-distance replication. LINBIT is run by its founders to this day, and all of its engineers and developers are in-house with offices in Europe and North America, which allows them to have global 24/7 support to complement their enterprise offerings. Visit linbit.com to learn more about the people behind LINBIT and the awesome software for block storage, duplication, and more. Have you ever sent a video or a picture to someone who has a different kind of phone than you? And for example, if someone has an iPhone and you have an Android or vice versa, they sometimes result in having, what's a pile of trash that they get that is in the form of an image or a video. It's a pile of garbage pretending to be a video. That's kind of like how I like
bad. Like it's like so grainy and nasty. And you send them a video or a picture, or it's super tiny. Like, I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah. And also there's been this kind of running joke about the blue bubble versus the green bubble. And that's because Apple has the iMessage system, which is pretty cool, actually. Because it makes it possible for people to send high quality videos to each other, but you can only do that from Apple to Apple. And it also does support SMS, but that's for the Android side. So if you wanted to send a video to an Android user, you're going to get that pile of garbage pretending to be a video. Now, so this certainly makes it pretty hard when you're like the only one in a group with an Android, or you're talking with people and then they do this whole they send you a message that says that they liked your thing, and just shows you that is an Apple user because they really just added a reaction and that sort of thing. So it's kind of a mess, and it has been for years. But it seems like there may be some adjustments happening. And Ryan, what's happening here?
Well, there's really good news. If you're there hanging out with your friends and they're like, hey, film this real quick, and then you send it to your friends and they're like, oh man, you're an Android user, you suck, with the grainy things. Those days are about to go away. So you can now hang out with your friends again that have Apple phones, because Apple is finally agreeing to support.
Like your family again.
Yeah, RCS. You can now like your family again. So Apple's going to support RCS, and RCS is what allows for rich media to be sent, and it can be encrypted. So one of the problems with SMS is it's not encrypted. They could read everything, your telecom, all that stuff. They could read it all. And of course, if you're following some of these projects out there, pretty much the government can read it, whether it's an iMessage or anything else. But I'm just talking about, like, they don't even have to try to target you to read SMS. It's just out there, where, as you know, when you're using iMessage, it's encrypted. And RCS is cool because it can be encrypted. And this is an important part.
I don't like the emphasis on the can so much. So,
yeah. This is where it gets interesting, because the EFF, who I love and adore, and they go to scale every year, and I donate and I get hats from them because I love them, even though I don't need another hat. I have lots of hats, but I just love EFF and everything they do. But they wrote an article and they state, on its own, the core RCS protocol is currently not any more secure than SMS, which that means not secure at all, because SMS is not secure. The protocol is not encrypted by default, meaning that anyone at your phone company or any law enforcement agent, ordinarily with a warrant, I like how they put ordinarily, because, you know, government would be caught cheating and stuff, will be able to see the content and metadata of your RCS messages. Now, this is where things get a little bit different, because Google's version of RCS does have an extension enabled that uses Signal's encryption protocol, but that only works only works if both users are utilizing Google Messages, the default text platform, and if the carrier supports it. Now in the US, thankfully, all 3 carriers finally do support RCS. So that one, at least in the US, we get a little check mark. But you've got other messaging platforms that are developed by the actual manufacturers themselves. For instance, Samsung creates their own crap layer on top of things, and all these other companies.
Hey, don't be talking about Samsung's layer on top of Android as if it is some terrible, horrible pile of garbage, without saying that it's a terrible, horrible pile of garbage, because it is.
In our opinions.
In our opinions.
Because of the privacy policy. Just read Samsung. Please read Samsung's privacy
I also don't
policy.
like the experience anyway. I had a conversation with someone who said, hey, Samsung's got their interface. I actually had a Samsung phone at the time, and they said Samsung's phone's interface is so much better now. I forgot what it's called, like the one thing or whatever. And then I was like, okay, I'll turn off my Nova launcher, and then I went back to the Samsung launcher, and it was awful. I was there for 45 seconds or something. Like it wasn't that short, but I tested some stuff, and I'm like, I go back.
No,
So well,
now they have the S24 AI in there. So the AI, because AI is so cool,
so it's artificially making it worse. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's automatically better. So who knows? The new one may be great, but again, Samsung, read the privacy policy. It's a great read. It's the one.
Unless you don't like horror books, then don't read.
Jill would get scared if she read it. Don't read that, Jill. It's like Stephen King wrote the thing. So it's worth noting that Google's encryption, they use Signal's encryption protocol like a piece of it, but it doesn't hide any metadata. So they kind of left that part out. They're like, oh, let's take that code. We don't need that. So they still get metadata about your messages. So even though it's RCS and even though it's technically encrypted, they can't read the content, allegedly, but they can see who you message with, what time, and how big the message was. So they can still gather quite a bit of information of who your contacts are when you're contacting, and then with the little location data where you're at when you're sending those contacts too. So
wonderful.
Not fantastic, but a little bit better than just having your message out there unencrypted.
Google is taking location data? No way.
No way.
Oh, you just turn it off. Oh wait, they got caught not doing anything with that.
Weird. I mean, it's just never would have guessed.
Here's the bad thing about that. So we talked about, hey, Google to Google, RCS, you can have an encryption layer. Yeah. This is great. But Apple has decided, as Apple typically does, that they're not going to use Google's proprietary implementation of RCS encryption. Rather, it will make its own encryption for its RCS usage. So while your pictures and videos will now be sent in full clarity, whether you're on Android or iPhone to each other, you can be friends again. You don't have to hate your Android peoples or your iPhone peoples. They may not be private because unless they use something that's a compatible layer that they partner in some way to make sure they can both decrypt each other, it's not going to work. So just keep using Signal. In other words, use Signal and don't worry about any of this garbage.
Some kind of encryption app. Yeah. If you can get people to use it, just use that. That's much better.
Use that. Just stick with Signal. Like it's RCS is here. Yay, clap. Thanks, Apple.
I mean, it is okay.
It's cool to send videos to your mom who's not going to download Signal, though my mom did because she's on another level than y'all's moms. But other moms, may be hard to get them to use Signal.
I see. Yeah. It's like, is that some weird flexing right there? But
I'm just saying. Man.
I mean, my mom uses Signal too, so I don't know.
Does she really?
About. Yeah. Man. I mean, yeah, I put it on there, so it's fine. But the anyway, the most frustrating thing with this whole situation is not having support for high quality content like video and stuff. So in a grand scale, this is a step forward. I mean, it's not a big step forward, but it's better to have this step than no step, because you're saying how, in track record of Apple, who are not playing well with others, they have been doing this for 15 years or something, where they refuse to have support for it. So at least they are somewhat open to having support.
Yeah.
I'm curious why.
Better. Probably the EU government made them, I'm sure.
That's what I was about to say. Like somewhere, some country was like, you have to do this. And they're like, okay, fine.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm actually really happy, that the interoperability between Apple and Android, will improve, and the quality of the pictures and videos sent will be higher resolution, like
Totally.
Michael was saying. And I actually did a little bit of research. So, Rich Communication Services, or RCS, supports file sizes up to 100 megabytes. Conversely, our current standard short message service, or SMS, only supports file sizes of 1 megabyte to 3.5 megabytes, depending on the carrier. They do limit some of those numbers.
So you could send an entire floppy disk.
Yes.
Through that.
That's it, though.
Yes, you could, and that's it. And it would also, wouldn't you guys agree, be nice that if you liked a picture on the Mac side, that it would be an actual like on the picture on the Android side, and not a little text message that says.
It's true.
So I feel like this might be that Apple is being forced to do this, but also I think it's maybe because Google has sort of fixed that in this roundabout way, where now on the Apple side, if you say that you like something, depending on what version of Android you have and what phone you have and that sort of thing, it will give you the reaction like it normally would as an Android user. And then when you give your reaction, it sends back the thing that Apple used to send, where it says the whole like.
It has gotten better between there. And that because, you have friends that are in this mixed ecosystems and things. And so, what's interesting is Apple has a darn near monopoly in the United States with everybody under the age of 25. It's 86% or something of everyone has an Apple device. So, some of these moves Apple did, this goes back to our discussion, which we got a lot of great feedback on from the community. And I really appreciate about our discussion
smart business, Ryan.
Good business. Yes. It's just good business. And, they get awarded for it. Because honestly, this would be one of those times where people were like, it's just smart business for Apple to do this. But the reality is it just wasn't very competitive or ethical from hey, let's have a fair competition here.
Ryan, what are you talking about? It's just because they have it's not like you're forced to only use their stuff. It's a walled garden, and it's so pretty. It has flowers over there. It's got a river over here.
Pond.
It's so pretty.
An apple peeing into a pond in the middle.
Yeah, it's like a sculpture of an apple.
You're right, Michael. I don't know what I was thinking, but don't trust the encryption stuff unless it's, Signal. What's the other one out there that's really a lot of people
Session's pretty cool.
Session. Yeah. Session's fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah.
So there are a lot of better options out there than the RCS stuff. But if you're sending it to family members and things. And by the way, WhatsApp was on trial in the Facebook trial, and they asked Zuckerberg if it could read any metadata, such as who you're sending text to and everything else. And Zuckerberg on trial said no. So if you trust, that it's probably better than SMS for sure. And maybe even better than RCS. Would I use it over Signal? No, but I know in a lot of countries, WhatsApp's kind of the standard. And, that's probably better than any of the other options out there. Signal best, or Session, Signal, then WhatsApp, and then maybe the others.
And also, WhatsApp's code encryption is based off of Signal. So there is that. And also, could be true that Zuckerberg said that, and it was true. It also could be true that they changed it after the fact, and no one would know.
It was worded in such a tricky way that the lawyers can say, you can say that, but really
true,
we can't. You never.
Yeah.
Also, it is worth noting that Facebook themselves claimed that they have added encryption to the regular messenger for Facebook. So that's cool. It only took you 20 years or something. But it's overall, I think that this is a good thing that's happening. We make jokes about how Apple's terrible because they are, and how Google's terrible because they are. But we also are acknowledging that RCS is better than having just SMS, But it's not the most encrypted thing. So if you're sending private stuff, you still don't want to use it.
Yeah, there you go. So there's some other news about Google, because why not just make this an Apple Google episode at this point?
Fantastic.
Yeah. So Google has done something that we've been dreaming of forever. On this show, we've been talking about, please, Google, delete our history.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, Google has
boy.
decided to delete history.
That's fantastic.
Not the history we wanted, not our personal information that they've been storing. Sorry, Michael. They're just getting rid of cached web page feature.
Why would you do this to me, Ryan?
That's the history they finally decided to get rid of. So that's a step in the right direction. They're deleting some history.
History. History that people sometimes use for practical reasons. But the actual...
Yeah. You know, the old saying, like, whatever you put on the internet stays on the internet. But that's still true. But Google's doing their part by getting rid of their caching
They're
feature.
doing their part to make that not true.
Yeah, which, has been used in the past. This caching feature essentially was a way for people who had really slow internet to be able to load a page and then be able to go back to it very quickly without having to utilize or even have restrictions on the amount of megabits and things that they can use. So, this was definitely when the internet was a little more frustrating, a little slower, something that was used there. Also, a lot of businesses got caught. The CEO would put some memo out there and think it was like bold and brave, and then all of a sudden people start going crazy and he's like, remove that. But you could go to the cached history option in Google and be able to see that old version of that. So when he's like, I never said that, it'd be like, boom, I brought receipts, sit down, sir. And then you had that ability. But Google doesn't like that. They're like, we don't want businesses. No, I'm kidding.
They've been doing this for 20 something years. So it's probably not that long, but I don't remember when they started, but I remember it's been there for a very long time. And I've used cache stuff for a lot of different things. It's also valuable in sense of you can look at previous versions of a website that you're working on, and you can reference some stuff and to see if the new code broke something. You could go to the and depending on the kind of code, if it's like JavaScript, for example, you could go to the cached version and see what's the difference in the current version versus the other version. So there are benefits to it in those cases. And also there's just the whole, finding people doing sketchy stuff and claiming things like that has happened many times.
Yeah.
Many times. Absolutely. So it is kind of a bummer that they're getting rid of this cache system. But also, I don't think a lot of people use it.
Yeah. And most of the people I saw upset were like people who were developers on websites and things like that. The everyday user was like, oh, that was a feature? I didn't even know that was an option there. But, they also said that pretty much the code's been unmaintained, pretty much like Google search, because if you use Google search lately, it sucks. But they're saying the code's unmaintained, so it's just kind of been sitting out there and not really reliable and all that stuff. But one of the reasons it existed again was because of slow internet. So one of the things we've brought up on this show that shocks a lot of people is how many people here in the United States have very, very slow internet, no access to broadband at all. 42 million Americans have no access to broadband still. According to Broadband Now, a data technology company, the FCC defines broadband as having download speeds of a minimum of 25 megabits per second and upload speeds of at least 3 megabits per second. So slower than that. And so we have 42 million Americans that don't even have that, or in many cases have no internet at all. So it's not like, hey, we solved the problem of the digital divide of kids in certain areas not having internet to be able to do their homework like other kids in other neighborhoods, giving them an unfair advantage. And of course, now we got the whole AI layer on there that they don't have access to on top of that, which makes it even worse. But we're getting rid of some of these older features as if we have solved it. And again, it's not Google's problem to fix. And frankly, there are other sites out there that I think do archiving and stuff too. So I don't know. Big deal or nothing sandwich?
I do think it is a big deal, only because of the digital divide. That does concern me a bit, because I know I actually have some family members that are still on dial-up, and I've actually showed them how to use those links to load the pages quicker. It's that's where it's scary, because we still have not everyone up to speed on the internet or even have internet across the country. So.
The 42 million is not having broadband. I don't. I'm curious how many don't have anything.
Anything.
Because there's definitely some people who I know are still using dial-up because there's been reports of that still being existing, and like, why is that? And it's mostly because companies aren't rolling out any kind of high-speed technology, even DSL, to areas like that. So that's a massive bummer. And this is a shame that they're getting rid of it, because it does help with a lot of stuff. Because for those who don't know, let's just clarify, the cached system is something where you have a website that has stuff that's constantly moving, but that can also be images, it can be video. And the cache system, where it's kind of like, here's a moment in time where it was at this point. So depending on what you're doing, that might not be helpful. A cached version of YouTube would not be very helpful, but a cached version of a news article or a cached version of anything that's educational purpose.
Static.
Those would be wonderful to have cached. So maybe instead of Google getting rid of everything, if they just cached stuff like that doesn't move, and they know the metrics of like how often a particular website is updated and stuff. So if it's updated once a day, you probably don't need to. Or if they're just doing pages on articles and stuff, maybe that's the thing they could do. So it's a bummer in that sense. And I do think that the lack of internet in certain places is a shame that they're getting rid of something that was very helpful to those people. But also, it's kind of sad, because I think that they're getting rid of it because it's like, well, nobody uses it anyway, so why are we continuing to do it? And then you have the case of so many people who would benefit from it just didn't know it existed.
Yeah, that's true. You've got the Internet Archive, though. That's out there.
That's true.
So that provides some ability for us to go back and see web pages, but it's not really a caching service.
Yeah.
By the way, have you ever lost your internet and then you open up and it pops up to Google and you're like, oh, I do have internet. And then you start typing and then it's like, you have no internet connection because that web page was cached, right? The Google page was cached right there. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. And for those who don't know what dial-up, imagine you have a picture of Michael's face that you want to download and you click download and then it loads pixel line by pixel line by pixel line. 3 minutes later, you've got to Michael's glasses. And then another 5 minutes later, you get to part of his beard. And about at 10 minutes, you're at the bottom of his beard and you finally have his face. That's
and also, this is a picture of my upper body as well. So you still got another 15 minutes away. But it's funny because dial-up is something that we've been away from for so long in so many areas. Like, for example, I'm a gigillionaire because...
because you have.
I don't know if you've heard.
I know the commercial. Yeah.
It's like the Spectrum commercial. It's so bad. It's so cringe. But it's actually it's cringe in a way that it's kind of funny, But
like dad jokes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I've had gig for a while, and it's like the comparison of what is technically called broadband should be set here. We should be expressing this 25 megabit. Versus a gigabit, which is 1,000 megabits. 1,000 megabits versus 25. Just to be qualified as broadband, it only needs to be 25.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
And we don't even have that for 42 million. That's what's crazy.
I know.
That's
crazy.
Again, it's not on Google to be, necessarily supporting that. They don't have to. It's a cool feature. Sorry to see it go, just like your search engine. All right, what do we got in gaming, Jill?
Oh,
shots fired. Just like in gaming.
Exactly.
We're going to talk a bit about the Steam Deck and some of its competitors, or at least one of its competitors. The Steam Deck has naturally inspired a lot of companies to dip their toes back into handheld gaming. Well,
and to create copycats,
Yes, and to create copycats. So this week we have a new alternative to the Steam Deck. And this one is powered by the Orange Pi, the makers of the popular Raspberry Pi alternatives. And they're combining forces with Manjaro Linux.
Nice.
And they're calling the Orange Pi, the Orange Pi Neo. And it's got a lot of interesting specs, including an AMD Ryzen 7 7840U CPU. And
I understood what that meant, yes.
Yeah, 1920 by 1200 resolution screen. That's 1610, which is nice, and 500 nits of brightness, and 120 hertz refresh rate, which is always a good thing.
So good.
It comes in 16 gigabyte or 32 gigabyte variations, and has storage of 512 gigabytes to 2 terabyte PCIe, 4.0 NVMe SSD, dual 6-axis gyroscopes, and a 50-watt battery. So the specs look pretty nice.
Yeah, they do. I mean, they packed a nice little bit of hardware here. I like the Orange Pi. I'm really interested. Raspberry Pi has had a lot of issues with supply chain, and Orange Pi has come in and provided some alternatives out there, and they're a pretty cool company, and a lot of people really like the Orange Pi. Thankfully, Raspberry Pi is starting to get over some of its inventory issues. And I love the Raspberry Pi 5 and all those type of things. But again, competition, like if they weren't there and people had to get back during the supply chain constraints and things, there were no other alternatives, it was a problem. So I'm really happy to see Orange Pi kind of dipping their toes into other waters. I think it's really kind of a natural progression to look at other pieces of hardware that they can get into. This is an interesting choice. I mean, the device looks just like the Steam Deck. I mean, just like it. And it will be really interesting to me because the Steam Deck isn't just about hardware. And that's where everyone who's trying to copy the Steam Deck keeps getting it wrong. It's so much not about the hardware.
It's not the hardware.
The Steam Deck. It's the operating system and how well and cohesive it is for handheld gaming. So I'm not quite sure how Manjaro aims to compete with SteamOS, but they are very, very talented team over there that do some incredible things with Manjaro. So I'm looking forward to seeing what their take is on it. Are they going to take SteamOS and kind of do some modifications? Because SteamOS is Arch-based, and so is Manjaro.
They are definitely not taking SteamOS and making modifications.
I mean, they may. How do you know?
Because SteamOS is not available to make modifications on.
Oh, well, there you go. So competition is a good thing, as pointed out earlier in the email, although they contradicted that entirely in the email. Sorry, Jim, but just pointing that back out again. Competition is a really good thing.
Hey, don't be disingenuous.
Yeah. Orange Pi for stepping up their game here.
That's good.
Well, pun intended. I think it's also cool that they're just not, it's just not another Steam Deck competitor where they're shoehorning Windows on it. At least it's Linux. It's actually a true competitor.
Yeah. And Manjaro, a lot of fans of Manjaro.
Yeah, Manjaro's
get it for that
great.
reason alone. It would be kind of cool to play with it. So, sure.
Yeah.
Mike, are you buying one?
You know.
You gonna wait?
Am I buying one? What's it cost?
I don't know. I didn't get that price thing.
See, that was my first thought, Ryan, when I was reading this article. What's the price point going to be?
Right.
So they haven't released the price point?
No.
I don't think so. I'm on their website. I don't see any price point yet. But
that's a bummer.
Yeah.
So up until this point, I would have to say no because I don't know what it is. So it could
$5.
be $5. Then yes, I will bet yes for $5.
Okay,
sure.
For $5, you're buying. All right,
100%. 50?
I was thinking,
yes.
Yeah.
50.
50.
Okay,
Wow.
we know
a little
at least.
low. Well, I was thinking since the Orange Pi Neo is made by Orange Pi and they're makers of great low-cost Linux-powered single-board computers, I'm assuming it will compete with the Steam Deck in price.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It would be kind of a bad move if they didn't compete with it. But I think that it's a smart move that they are making a Linux version for their particular handheld. So it's very cool because a lot of times we're talking about the Windows versions. They're not like the whole reason that Steam Deck is effective. It's because the tech and performance of the Steam Deck is based on the fact that it's running a Linux system. And Manjaro, I'm not sure if it's the best choice because there are other systems and other distros that are made specifically to kind of be an alternative to SteamOS, like Chimera OS and things like that. Yeah. And I think Bazite is another one. But there's a lot of them that are for that specific purpose. And I'm not sure if Manjaro with Steam on top, like I hope they're going to do more than that. But if it's just Manjaro with Steam on top, I don't think that would be that effective.
But they do have, they're using the Manjaro Gaming Edition in here that they're showing, which is the desktop edition. They're showing in some of the screenshots and things of it. So again, I don't think this little tiny screen would look great with Manjaro desktop edition just showing up like a regular desktop, But then again, all the Windows portables do that. You just log into literally Windows, which again kind of takes away from the whole experience of a handheld in my mind. Now, we did say, it's very similar hardware to the Steam Deck and looks very similar, but they are advertising a lot of differences in the way they're doing cooling, some of the differences in the type of buttons that they're using. So definitely we'll have a link in the show notes. You could check out all of the differences there. It just, it's got the touch pads on the side. There's a lot of similarities, like a lot. Check it out.
As a quick side note, I was talking about how it's a different, like they're not able to do the SteamOS thing because SteamOS is not. I was thinking about this because of this news coming out that Steam and Valve making the decision to make SteamOS not accessible as like an ISO or open source, because it's not. If you want to get the open source code, you can get open source code of SteamOS for version 2, which was based on Debian from a long time ago on Steam machines, but not this one. So it's interesting that they haven't released it. But also at the same time, I'm not bothered by that. I think that it's actually okay because they're putting all this effort for the Proton support and everything to work with Linux desktop. So it's benefiting the whole ecosystem.
Yes.
In the same time that they're having this compatibility system in this product that they're building. So while I know some people are kind of annoyed that SteamOS has not been released yet, I think it kind of makes sense because the whole reason why I believe that they have it is because if they did, the real claim that they have of being the better option goes away, because all the people who are putting Windows because they don't know what else to do, they would be able to just take SteamOS and do it.
Because it's such a niche use case, you're not as bothered by it of, hey, it's
because it's made for
and
it's made specifically for that particular device.
Yeah.
And because of all the work they have done, it has also affected all of us on the Linux ecosystem already in a very positive way.
Yeah.
So
true.
In that sense, it's kind of interesting because it's like, is there a possibility? Is there a type of situation where proprietary OS could benefit us?
I disagree with you, and you're an open source trader. Jill, what are your thoughts?
I don't think you actually disagree. I just think you should want to say that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Honestly,
he's not answering it audio because you're not being able to. But if you watch the video, he is agreeing to it.
I think this is it's actually a good business decision by Valve, because, and it's not even just the business decision. It was there from the start of the development of the Steam Deck. They said this was going to be a work in progress, and for them to put out the best OS for the best hardware and to iterate new versions of that hardware. They have to have an in-house OS for that process.
Yeah, but you can still open source it.
Yeah, that's true. But also the thing that Jill just said, which is kind of awesome, is it's a good business decision, right?
Yeah.
In this case, it's actually also kind of an ethical business decision because of the fact that they are benefiting the Linux desktop system so much with and I get to play games that I want to play on my desktop, regardless of having a Steam Deck or not. And I do have a Steam Deck, but you don't have to use the Steam Deck in order to get the benefit. So it's kind of like they found a middle ground that is a positive way of saying smart business decision.
So Bobby stabs Tommy, but we're going to let Bobby go because he also works at charities on the weekend, because Bobby's kind of a good guy, other than stabbing Tommy.
So I don't want to point out that your logical fallacy is so massive because that would be rude to do that on a show, but it is ridiculous. So I'll say that.
That's what I was going for.
Okay.
Well, Proton has been open source for everyone to use.
True.
So the mechanics that make the gaming work really well on their OS is out there.
Yeah, it's just the specifics for their specific product.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy is because they are a prime example.
They created a walled garden.
Yeah.
No, they didn't, because you can just use Linux desktop and still get the benefit of playing the games. That's why it's not the same thing.
All right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting
thought
Billy, experience. Let us know what you think. We're not talking. They're not stabbing anybody. like it's ridiculous. And also, what they're doing is a positive thing for us. Like, we still get benefit. It's not
Poor Tommy.
They're enhancing it
Tommy.
for hardware that they have yet to put out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, guess you guys are stabbing them from both sides, Jill and Michael. Poor Tommy. All right, Jill, take us. Well, Tommy may need this software spotlight. Jill, can you tell Tommy about the software spotlight this week?
Oh, yeah.
Because he's been stabbed.
Yeah, so many people still feel uncomfortable, like me and like Tommy, with the idea of using commercial software to track their health and vitals.
I think Tommy's more uncomfortable with the stabbing.
Yeah, this can be, vital information to track changes in your overall health. And if you fall into that camp, check out My GnuHealth. This app is awesome. This is a personal health tracking app that keeps records of blood pressure, weight, glycemia, and oxygen levels. And this could actually be a great app to track this information, provide those records to your doctor, or detect abnormalities to know it's time to see your doctor. Check this app out. And it's available as an awesome flat pack.
There you go, Jim.
Yes.
There you go. Flat pack version.
And
that's fantastic. I think that's good. And also, it's also important that to be able to check your blood pressure. I think that Tommy's is going down as he's losing some.
He has some abnormalities.
Aww.
Yeah, poor Tommy.
Well, I am personally just started using this app to track my vitals to show my doctor on the next visit. Literally, Michael and Ryan don't even know that I've just within the last few weeks have started using this app because I am tracking my blood pressure as well on the daily basis. And this app I was looking forward to because I got to talk to the developers of GnuHealth at scale about 5-6 years ago.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
So I remember them talking about this app that was coming. So ever since then, I've been very interested.
How cool is that? And this is such important information because what people don't realize a lot is, I'm as bad as anyone in this camp, especially when I was in my 20s. Like I didn't have a doctor, primary care physician. I literally, if I got really sick, would go to urgent care and get the medicine I needed. And then that was my primary doctor, is that one visit when I'd get sick enough to need an antibiotic or something. And cause I just didn't track any of that, but that history can really be the early detection of disease, heart problems, all kinds of things, even, major changes with organs that could be affecting you in ways you don't even realize if you don't have that data tracked. So a lot of these watches and other things offer to track this. They even have monitors with really tiny little needles that fitness people wear that actually are meant to track blood sugar and things, but they use it to for their fitness goals and things. They don't have blood sugar issues. And so all of this stuff of tracking health is super awesome and super important. The problem is
that needle one doesn't sound that awesome.
It seems like it'd be really bad, but apparently it doesn't hurt. But I still
it sounds awful. It sounds like a terrible idea.
Imagine doing like weightlifting with needles in your arm. I
am very impressed by the people who do it, but I also think that they might be crazy.
Yeah, they might be crazy. But this information, what I'm getting at, is super important. And having something like GnuHealth that you can trust this information isn't being commercialized and sold, but you can still keep track of it and share it with your doctor, I think is awesome.
This could also be good for like tracking your blood pressure, like for Ryan's rage issues.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you guys, the rage issues, just ask Timmy or Tommy.
Wait, you're the one who stabbed?
Forgot his name. You're
the one who stabbed the fictional character that you didn't even remember the name you came up with?
Poor Tommy. Poor Timmy.
The worst part, Ryan, is that you forgot his name.
No, that's the worst middle name is Timmy.
Timmy Tommy? Wait, is it Tommy Timmy Tomlinson? Is that what it is?
No,
Tommy Timley Thompson. That's what it is.
You should at least know his name as you guys are stabbing him, shanking him. Poor guy. All right.
Okay.
What's your tip and trick, Michael? How to make a shank in prison?
No, definitely not. I think we're going to keep this a little more PG than that.
All right.
So let's talk about the tip of the week, which is the Firefox feature of Reader View. For those who don't know that Reader View exists, it is awesome. So let's say you're on your desktop and you go to his website and there's just ads everywhere. Now, I personally am okay with ads to a point. For example, if they have 3 ads on a webpage, totally fine with that. If they have 5 ads on a webpage, kind of much. but also okay. If they have 12, then you're ridiculous and stop it.
Do you count them and you're like, oh, this is
when
6,
I see so many, I 100% count them. There are some websites in the Linux space that might have that many, specifically that many, and it's annoying and excessive. And
that's coming from someone who's in marketing, so that means something. Yeah,
because also it's every time these ads pop up, there typically is JavaScript attached to them and stuff, so it's just cranking out tons and tons of stuff. So it just makes the website so slow, depending on what it is. Because there are times where some of these ads and some of these websites, if you ever go to these like listicle websites that have something that you might want to get some details on, and you scroll and then it throws you back up like, hey, it's another ad. And then you scroll down, it throws you back up. Like that nonsense is the most irritating thing.
What about a mobile? Like mobile is the worst. Sometimes these ads take your browser
That's
over.
the worst when that happens when it throws you back up on the mobile, because you got to scroll like 50 times to get to the thing and then it throws you back up.
For that. Yeah.
Anyway, so all you got to do is click
so scrolling's hard.
Exactly. That's why I have a keyboard that's so nice to my fingers. So this is the thing that makes you have a solution for this is the reader view, people, because you get to be able to just click one button and have all of that crap thrown away. Yeah. And you just see the text and the content that you want. Sometimes the images are there, depending on the article, and sometimes they just take the images out because you just want to read the content. So it might not be perfect for everyone's use case, but it does eliminate the websites that are incredibly excessively annoying with the stuff.
Yeah.
This is awesome, Michael.
And those people deserve to not get the ads viewed because it's too many.
Yeah, it's obnoxious.
As a marketer, there is a point where it is too many.
It is a point.
Yeah, I actually use Reader View for every show here on Destination Linux to easily read the articles we use for our show notes and to do research. And I'm constantly using Reader View on the beautiful Firefox. It's also available on Vivaldi too. I do use it on Vivaldi.
How dare you bring up this? How dare you? Firefox is the only browser to ever mention period. I mean, unless they get rid of like their CEO and like things happen and like, all right, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
There's another good reason for those of you that are low vision or blind is the screen readers work better with Reader View turned on.
Yeah, that's true. And also, I think there on some implementations of Firefox, there's a built-in screen reader.
Yes, there is. In fact, there is for the Raspberry Pi, and
So, did you notice that Jill said I use it for the show notes? We don't send you ads, Jill, in the show notes.
No.
But now I want to. Like, we've been missing a whole potential clip.
No, I meant for like reading articles that are linked in our show notes. Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, yes. I'm going to start putting ads in our show notes just for Jill.
No ads.
See
I love HedgeTalk. It's great. It's clean.
All right, good. Just checking. All right, so we have some exciting news. I know,
exciting
it's never happened before. We've
never said this before.
Yeah. We're going to Scale 2024. I've booked my ticket. I am headed there March 14th through the 17th. And I actually have a room too. I'm staying in a hotel room, Michael. I'm not going to have to travel all the way back to Texas to sleep in my house. I'll have a hotel there.
That's very good to travel there and have a place to go to.
Thank you, Michael. I was thinking ahead. March 14th through the 17th. Come join us. Me, Michael, Jill will be there at Scale in Pasadena, California. The greatest, absolutely greatest Linux festival out there. You've got to come join.
Sure is.
And
awesome.
Just for our listeners, by the way, just for our listeners, don't go and share this with other podcasts. They ain't cool like us. Just for our listeners, even you, Jim, you can use the promo code TUX, TUX, on the first page of Scale registration to get 50% off your Scale Pass. And I'm not being disingenuous. That's true. You get 50%
off. That's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
And in addition to that, I think it's going to be a great year at Scale. And in fact, I think we're going to have very high expectations when you come to our booth number 420.
Oh, wow. That's our booth number?
That is our booth number.
That's fantastic. I love it. I absolutely love that. All right. A big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening. However you do it, We love your faces. Come join us on our Discord. Get to know people in the community that share their love and passion for open source and Linux and everything else. We've got weightlifting, movies, all of the stuff you can geek out on there on our Discord. So go to tuxdigital.com/Discord. And did you know that we actually have a video version of this show? When we went to Scale and other conferences, it cracks me up. It's like when people are like, oh my gosh, I can finally see your faces. And it's like, well, you can every week because we have a video podcast.
Yes.
I think we've been doing videos since the beginning.
Yeah, the very beginning. You may not,
but also it is funny
face,
because
Jill's face.
I mean, Jill's, sure, exactly.
Yeah.
But it is kind of funny because of the fact that most of our audience is on the audio version, the podcast only side, and we've been doing video for so long, and a lot of people don't know that. But it's also important because of how important to see when Ryan says something and then I call him out on it and he doesn't audibly answer it. He just nods his head yes that he was.
Yeah.
See, that's why you'd want to watch the video version.
Yeah, there's so much Easter. There's so many Easter eggs and behind the scenes.
Yeah,
going
so
on.
many behind the scenes. By the way, if you want to see a lot of behind the scenes stuff, you need to become a patron because they get unedited versions of the show. And if you don't want ads, well, that's where you become a patron and you don't have to listen to any ads. Become a patron of Destination Linux. You get unedited version of the show. You can watch the show live and you get no ads. What more do you want, people? No, seriously, what more do you want?
What more could we do to make you sign up to this? All you need to do is go to tuxdigital.com/membership and you can get so much awesome perks. And what could we do? Well, maybe we could have a patron-only post show where patrons can come and hang out with us. Well, turns out we do have that. Yeah. Maybe we could have a patron-only section of our Discord server that you get special access to us and to others who are our patrons, and you can talk about whatever you want. Maybe we could do, we do have that. Just
so good.
What do you know? tuxdigital.com/membership to find out more and check out all the cool stuff that you can get. Plus, also go check out tuxdigital.com/store because there you can get all the awesome swag that we have available, like t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, stickers, coasters, and so much more at tuxdigital.com/store.
Yeah. And I know you all have money because you're getting your tax returns back. What better thing to spend your tax return money on than swag and becoming a patron?
Yes, exactly.
People?
Yes, so true. And make sure to check out all the incredible shows here on Tux Digital. That's right. We have an entire network of shows to fill your entire week with geeky goodness. Check out Linux Out Loud with Matt, Nate, and Wendy having a blast and sharing their passion for Linux and open source. And everyone head to tuxdigital.com and subscribe to all our incredible shows. And don't forget to leave a rating on your favorite app so others can discover the power of open source and keep those penguins marching in the full Monty of Linux and open source awesome sauce.
Everybody, have a great week. And remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination. And I'm being genuine when I say that. I'm not being disingenuous. I mean it.
100%. We've said it so many times, it has to be true.
100%.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. See you next week. And we mean that. We'll see you next week. If you watch the video version, well, maybe Ryan is giving you something right now, but you'll never know until you watch the video version.